Today we're talking about Storytime animators.
No wait, please don't leave.
Yes, I know. You're too cool for this nonsense. You see actual animators. The ones that pour their souls into their work without the need to have them be about just how awkward they were on #RelatableDie, and Storytime animators have spent the last decade consuming its innards. There's only so many ways that you can say you're introverted without it becoming stale, and it sure as shit will get stale when that's the topic of every single one of your videos. In fact, it isn't even animation sometimes. This is a PowerPoint with words, what the hell? But hang on a minute, my surprisingly passionate viewer, because we're in the midst of a very interesting time in the Storytime animation space. Namely, the biggest names have realized that there are only so many childhood and school stories that they can tell, and that now that they have teams and actual businesses around their content, they need to be something else than #relatable or just cut their losses and go on the longest sabbatical. You know, like Tabs.
Hola.
Adios.
Take Jaden Animations, for instance. Sometime in the last couple of years, she and her team have decided that they had just about used up all of the personal stories that they could. Probably after realizing that she made a video about bursting into hives from burnout, or when she realized she was now making videos about the history of her hair. And so, since then she has been focusing entirely on gaming related content, with one notable and extremely personal exception. And then there's James Relison, aka The Odd Ones Out, arguably the most successful creator on this particular branch of animation. 18 million subscribers, shorts people actually seem to want to watch, and completely unproblematic as far as I can tell. But even he can only relay stories about his old work on Subway and his experiences on tour for so long. Fortunately, his success has helped him make something bigger. No longer he's just a YouTuber, he is now the creative and executive producer and director of a Netflix series, Oddballs. Coming to you from the same studio that brought us 101 Dalmatian Street, and Oddballs bears absolutely no resemblance to real life or, indeed, many of James's videos. And thank God for that, because instead of getting this...
Try to imagine the internet without social media.
He went and tried to create something that people who were done with Storytime animation right around the time they realized why people take out lawns can please take a look at. The first episode of this show is available on YouTube, and we'll mostly be using that for footage. Thank Christ, otherwise I think this would just be as stilted and lifeless as a particularly lazy Storytime animation.
Got him!
So we start with James, not the same James from his channel. This one is a bubble boy, and that's about it for similarities. This James still goes to in Arizona with the rejected cast of The Amazing World of Gumball, and is friends with a sentient crocodile called Max. Later episodes bring a new body into the mix with Echo, time traveler and hovering bottomless pit, but for now we're getting to know these two just finishing up their camping trip, and facing the most challenging issue of a camping trip.
Perfect breakfast! Man hasn't changed the toaster in 100 years!
Actually, they did change them, just for the worse.
How is it that we have every smart appliance, from watches to refrigerators, but no one's created a smart toaster?
No, those exist. They're marginally worse than whatever it is that you're about to make. So they make a sentient baby toaster, and then the show goes in an interesting direction. See, ordinarily I expect that they would go the traditional route. Max here is the stern parent and James the incompetent bumbling one, and then they argue. The kid cries, they learn a lesson, and everything goes back to normal by the end of the episode. Instead, they show that arguing can not only make the baby sad, it can actually fuck up the baby, in this case creating an evil, sociopathic, homicidal toaster. One that, on what would be the point where the power of love would solve everything, actually attempts to kill its creator. Jeez. As an introduction to a new show, it's a pretty good one. Over the next 11 episodes, you get a run through ribs, murderers, dino nuggets, and a salesman that I swear to you has to be the son of Freaky Fred. All of it done well enough that when I went back to check what his YouTube channel was like, I was jolted at the downgrade. Even when his team is doing really outstanding work. I guess that's the difference between a staff of 1,000 and one of 100. Of course, the prevailing thought when you see that little 7+ tag on the Netflix page is, this is clearly a show for little kids, it doesn't need to be good, and we don't need to see it. And at least the latter part of that sentence is correct, but we've long since passed the time when there was an upper limit to stop watching things. Maybe when adults wore suits and were much better at fooling everyone into thinking that they had things figured out, but when the actual demographic of the show that spawned bronies are now getting driver's license, get yourself a 1C and some cereal, we don't care. And if you do want to spend your weekend pretending you're 7, should you watch Oddballs? I don't know. I was ready to pile on this thing. It's a TV show made by a YouTuber, for fuck's sake. But I found some sympathy for the devil when watching it. It's aimed to a different population than the one James tries to cater to on his YouTube channel. Instead of banking on nostalgia and cheap relatability for tweens, these animations are self-contained stories with a little unobtrusive myth arc that only really matters on the opposite ends of the show. This is exactly what you like to see from YouTube animators, and why you sub to their Patreons and spend months waiting for their next update. Even if Oddballs doesn't get a second season, and shows like this usually have it approved about 5 seconds after the first one, James has already proven that he's a little more than a YouTuber, making him, yes, an oddity.